Suppose you need an important cake for an important occasion. Here it is, a walnut cake with a whipped cream batter, a brandy butter filling, chopped nut sidewalls, white frosted top, covered with sweet words of love. It's a V.I.P. cake today on the French Chef.
The French Chef is made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation.
Welcome to the French Chef. I'm Julia Child. I call this a V.I.P. cake just because it's so terribly good to eat. It's a walnut cake called Le Brantôme, because Brantôme is where walnuts come from in the Dordogne Valley in France. And it's a very unusual cake because it's made with whole eggs and a whipped cream batter, which I've never seen before. But what's particularly good about it, it's a homemade cake made from scratch, and they just have that kind of a taste that nothing else has. It's eggs and sugar and flour and walnuts, but everything is fresh and lovely, and it's just a real pleasure to eat when you want to serve something marvelous. Now, of course, whenever you're making a cake, you have to have an order of battle so that the troops are drawn up and everything is ready to go. And there are several rules to follow, and rule one, strangely enough, is read the recipe. We always have to say that because some people never do. But you want to read it because you want to know what you're up against, and also so that you can relate the cake that you're going to do to other cakes. And in other words, so that you really know what you're about. Then you want to preheat the oven, 350 degrees in this case, and get out all your ingredients and all your equipment. And then you can start in. And there are two general types of cakes. One has separated eggs, in which the whites are separated from the yolks. And that is the sponge cake or biscuit type. And the other is the whole egg cake, in which the whole eggs are together, and that is the Genoise cake. You remember the Genoise jelly roll and the madeleines and pound cakes. They're very much alike. So we start out here with 3 whole eggs. I mean 3 whole eggs, U.S. graded large. And you break them into the bowl of a mixer. And I think that if you're going to do a whole egg cake like this, if you don't have a mixer on a stand or an electric mixer, pick another recipe, because there's so much beating required, it just ain't worth it, I think. So there you've got 3 whole eggs and 1.5 cups of sugar, and then you start beating. But the reason I'm using this ancient beater is it's just to show you that this is entirely the wrong kind of beater to use. Because if you start out with a beater like this, that has a big, wide, flat bowl, you just ain't going to win. Because what you have to do is to beat your egg yolks and sugar until they are very thick, really like a mayonnaise. And so, what you want to have is not, see, this bowl has a flat bottom, and it's a great big wide thing, and the beater goes round and round and round, and it doesn't gather all of the eggs together at once. And if you're going to win, it has a small bowl like this, but this is too small. That isn't useful for this kind of recipe at all. What you want is any kind of a bowl that will fit on the mixer, that has fairly, ideally rounded bottomed, and slightly slanting sides. However, this glass one, which I bought in my hardware store, works perfectly well. This beater has had its 25th anniversary, and they're still making exactly the same kind of a beater with the same kind of a bowl. And I don't know why they don't change their ways a little bit, because it's absolutely no good for this kind of a mixture. Now watch what happens if you can see with that practically all the eggs are in motion at the same time, and that's just what you want. So in other words, if you find yourself, because this beater works perfectly well, just if all you need to do is to change the bowl. So if you find yourself with this silly kind of an arrangement, just change the bowl and you'll be all right. But this makes so much noise, I'm not going to beat it completely, because I have another one, I have another one already beaten. Because I can't, it takes about 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes to beat. Now it won't seem to beat at all. Now, I was thinking after 25 years it had given up the ghost. But if you beat them ahead of time, just let it go very slowly. But it'll take 5 or 6 minutes, and during that time you can get all the rest of your things ready. The next thing that you have to do is prepare your cake pans. We want 2 9-inch pans that hold 6 cups that are buttered and bottom lined with paper and floured. So take some soft butter and just rub it around in the inside of the pan, being sure to cover it all over. And then put a piece of wax paper in the bottom and butter that also. If you're cutting wax paper anyway for the bottom of the pans, make a dozen or so, and then you'll have them all ready. You can even buy ready-cut cake pan liners that put some flour in and just turn it all around in the pan, just so that everything is covered. And then dump it out and bang it to get rid of the extra flour. And then here we have our 2 pans that are all ready. And the next thing that we need are nuts. And we also have to have flour, and we have to have some cream. But you always want to get your cake pans ready in your oven, and your oven lit, so that, because when you start in the cake, you have to go right on through. And now we have flour. We want 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, not cake flour, all-purpose. And have a piece of wax paper. And there's 1 cup of flour and 1/2 cup of flour. And then either put it in a sieve or a sifter, either one. And you don't have to, all this business about sifting the flour 5 or 6 times is not necessary, because modern flour is pre-sifted anyway. So all of that jazz is old-fashioned. And now we want 2 tablespoons of double-action baking powder. Double-action baking powder means that the leavening action happens both in the batter when it's mixed and then also in the oven. So you might as well have it double. And then stir it around. Even that isn't necessary because it's all going to be folded. But just set it on your wax paper. That's 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I might have said tablespoons. 2 teaspoons of baking powder and 1½ cups of all-purpose flour. And now, looking at this recipe, I see we need 1 cup of ground walnuts and 1½ cups of cream. I'll just see how the eggies are doing very nicely. I'm going to get the cream ready to beat out of the fridge. And then I'm going to pause and do the walnuts too, so we'll have everything ready. Get that cream over there. And now we want pulverized or ground walnuts. And in some places, in some stores, if you look around, you can find already pulverized or ground walnuts. Or you can find them chopped if you just look around. But if if you can't find them ground, it's very easily to grind them yourself in a meat grinder or a blender or even a grater. But I thought you'd enjoy seeing this ingenious French grinder. It's not like a blender, it's just for dry things like nuts and breadcrumbs. It has the blades in there and the top here, and when you press the top, the blades go around. And you have instant control. And so you grind, and you just grind about half a cup at a time. If you put in too much, the nuts splatter around, but it goes so quickly. It's really much faster than the blender. Then there are the nuts in, and they just go boom, boom, boom. But what's nice is you have complete control, so you can make as fine or as rough a grind as you like. There they are, all ground up. That was very fast. Now you have a little instrument to take the blades out so you won't cut your fingers. And you have to lift everything out together. And there we are, into our cup. We just want 1 cup of nuts. Really, to have all of the electrical equipment you would like, you would have to have a small chateau to hold it all, I think. Now, there are the nuts already. I'm going to see cream is doing nice. I think I'll turn it off for a moment. It seems to be moting up. And now we want 1½ cups of heavy cream. I've got 1½ cups of heavy cream in this bowl, and there's ice cubes and water. And whenever you're whipping cream, you want to be sure that you, here I've got another thing, be sure that you whip it over, that it's chilled and the bowl is chilled. And you can do it with the regular old rotary beater. But I don't like the rotary beater as well, because I think that a hand whip does it a little better, because I think you should consider it like egg whites, in that the more air that you can beat into the cream, the better. It's going to take you about 5 minutes anyway. And it has a rather nice look and sound. It's a gentle kind of beating. But just remember always to put it over ice, and then you're never going to have any trouble at all. You don't have to do it fast. And you just beat away until it doubles in volume. And we want the kind of whipped cream in France that they call crème chantilly, or lightly whipped cream. I'm not going to do it all, because there's no sense for us to sit for 5 minutes watching me whip cream. Now there you are, chantilly. You see it's not stiff, it sort of softly plops back on itself. And that's all the more than you want it done. And it has a lovely consistency that way. Chantilly, or chantilly. Now, back to the eggs. And the interesting thing is that you want that the eggs and the cream are going to be just about the same consistency. This old baby's really just about given up. No! I think it's so mad at me, I insulted it. I'll just take this off and beat in the... I've got to put in a little bit of salt and a little bit of vanilla. But I'll do that with something else, because I don't trust it anymore. I want 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. And don't use anything but pure vanilla extract. If you don't have it, use something like grated orange or lemon peel, because imitation vanilla is a cheap, horrid taste, and if you're going to make a beautiful cake, you don't want it in it. Then a pinch of salt. Just take it up with your thumb and fingers and put it in. That just brings out the flavor a little bit. And then to stir that in. But notice the consistency of those eggs now, and they're of the cream. They're just about the same. And just to keep the eggs up, I like to sift in about a little bit of the flour, folding it with the rubber spatula. But the main idea is to have the two things of the same consistency so that when you combine them, they will combine properly and one won't sink and the other rise. Now, because the cream bowl is bigger, I'll turn the eggs into it. Be very careful when you're doing the eggs that you always use a clean beater. If you suddenly beat it up with your cream whisk, the eggs will completely collapse. Just because the cream is greasy. Now start sifting the flour on and using our same old folding, scooping motion, and remembering that all there is to folding is that you're just trying not to deflate the eggs in the cream, so that you do it gradually with this scooping motion going down and around the bowl, and at the same time sprinkle on some of the nuts. And I think it's always much better in something like this to fold things in gradually, because if you tried to put all the flour in at once, it would be very difficult to fold it, and you would end up by collapsing things. You can take your spatula and pull it across the top. And I'll put in a few more nuts. As we've done having soufflés and all kinds of things that include folding, and there's no trick to it. If you just remember what it is that you're trying to do, which is not deflate things, but get everything mixed in together. And remember, it's just that scooping motion, and you keep turning your bowl. But I think once you've mastered folding, nothing in the way of soufflés and cakes will ever bother you at all. And now these are ready to go into the cake pans. And these are 9-inch, the cake pans. You look on the bottom of the pan, if it's an American pan, and it says what size it is, 9 by 1.5, and the 9 is the top measure. The important thing is that they hold 6 cups. They could be a square pan. And if you want to measure the cups, just fill them with water and then see how much water was in it. And divide the batter fairly evenly. I think I haven't got quite enough in that. Then spread it around the pan and push it up about, not quite up to the top of the rim all the way around, but you see that batter's lovely and thick. It's held itself up very nicely. But it's interesting, I think, having whipped cream rather than butter, which one is so used to having, but it makes it a lovely, light, delicious cake. Now, because these rise up quite high, you may find that it's a good idea to put a paper collar, a buttered aluminum collar around them. This is just a little bit of safety measure, because if it rises up and spills over in the oven, you've had it, because the whole thing spills over and you've got something left to eat, but it's not very good. But one thing also, if it's in the oven and you see that it's rising up and might run over, you can also always open the oven and quickly put a collar on. So keep an eye on it. And this is going into a 350-degree oven with the racks about in the middle level. Or if your oven is small, you put it on 2 racks, one above the other, and then switch pans. But in this case, they're diagonally so that there's enough space in between. And then these will bake about 25 minutes. But after 22 minutes, take a look, and the cake will have risen up above the top of the pan a little bit. And then it'll begin to sink down and brown. And it's done when it is just a little below the edge of the pan, and you see a hairline of shrinkage between the cake and the pan. That's usually about, say, 25, 27, 28 minutes. You don't want to overcook them, but you want to be sure that they're cooked. And then after they're done, let them sit for 10 minutes to cool, then run a little knife around the side of the pan and unmold them onto a cake rack. And they're very delicate cakes. And you'd unmold them, that would be the upside down, and then after they've cooled, turn them so that they're right side up. And that's it, and you can do them ahead of time, and when they're cool, you can freeze them. And now we're going to have a frosting and filling. And we've done so many fillings and things that I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is a glace royale, or royal icing, which is a nice and a very easy one to do. It starts out with 1 egg white, or about 2 tablespoons of egg white, and a little bit of lemon, or it could be even, as they say in French, acetic acid, about a 1/4 of a teaspoon, and then just confectioner's sugar. I'm going to start out with about 1½ cups. And in the old days, you beat it around with a wooden spoon for about 5 or 6 minutes until it thickened, but nowadays, use an electric beater. And the idea is that you beat it until it thickens by itself. You can add a little bit more powdered sugar. But the egg white eventually stiffens the frosting enough. I have to put a little bit more in there. It's supposed to, what the French call, make the beak. When you see that there, that's almost made the beak. I'm not going to let it go as far as it could. It probably needs another minute or 2. But you want to flavor it up. I'm going to flavor it up with a little good cognac. And then if you make this frosting ahead, cover it with a damp paper towel, because it hardens up. That's one of the nice things about it. It hardens fairly nicely after it's set. And now, here's my filling. There, I've got filling and apricot glaze. And this is a brandy butter filling here. And do you remember when we made, a long time ago, cake for company that had a lovely orange butter cream in the inside? Well, this is exactly the same thing. It's made with egg and butter and sugar, but instead of orange juice, it has cognac in it. It's very, very nice. And then you take the other cake and just put it right down on it, lining them up as nicely as you can. They're very delicate and soft, so that you want to treat them carefully. And then we want to put some glaze on. Let's see here. Apricot glaze on the sides, which is going to hold the nuts. I'm not going to do the whole thing, because to do it nicely would take too long. I'm just showing you what to do. This is warm apricot glaze, which is apricot jam that has been sieved, 1 cup of it, sieved, and then boiled down with 2 tablespoons of sugar until the last drops are sticky. And then nuts on the sides. And I think, as a matter of fact, it's a good idea just to do half of it first, and then put on the glaze, and then put on more of the nuts, because the glaze makes the nuts stick on. Then get the nuts on part of it, and then put on a little more. You might even do it in thirds. Because once the glaze is set, that's one reason why you boil it down, so it's rather like a tasty glue. Once it sets, it then holds the nuts in place. And then after you've got the side walls all done, then you put on your royal frosting on the top. go to my recipe. Well, we're just about done. But see, that's has a nice glisten to it. And I think one thing that's good about it is I love a fondant frosting, but that takes a little time to make unless you happen to have some on hand. And now a little trick here to smooth it out. It's never is going to be as smooth as a fondant that's poured over, but if you have a little spatula with water, you can wet that and draw it over. And if you make a terrible mess of it, you can always cover it up with something. That's one thing like parsley and nuts. Now here, these are little words of love which you can draw on the cake, or if you're not very sure of your prowess, you can take some bitter chocolate in a little grater and just grate the chocolate on top. And that's very nice too. So that makes a very pretty cake. So you don't really have to be so terribly expert to come up with the cake. And so, in other words, so if you're not awfully good at frosting, at least you can do a top that looks very nice indeed. And so I'm going to cut into this so you can see how it looks after all this talk. And we're having a rather chic little party with champagne and coffee for some very important people. And I'm going to cut into this cake, and you're going to see it. And this cake will easily serve 12 people, I should say. It just depends on how big a serving you do. There you are. I'll turn it that way so you can see that, and then I'll cut one more piece. And you could serve wine with it. I think for a very important cake like this, probably champagne is one of the is the thing to serve with it. Now this, even people like me, and I'm one of those people who really only like chocolate cake, like La Reine de Saba, Le Marquis, but even I like this V.I.P walnut cake. Le Breton, voila. So that's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit.
The French Chef has been made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation. Julia Child is co-author of Mastering the Art of French Cooking, Volumes 1 and 2.